Can you help EMS involuntarily transport that person to the hospital for medical care? Again, even if the patient does not want to go. All right. My name is Anthony Bandiero, attorney and senior legal instructor for Blue Gold Law Enforcement Training, bringing you another roadside chat. So this is an interesting question. This is an officer in Tennessee. He said, we responded to assist an EMS on a medical call. Now, EMS is forcing a subject to go to the hospital against their will, right? And they asked police help escort the subject to the ambulance, which may require force because they were refusing to go. Can we legally assist EMS even though the subjects are not doing anything criminally wrong and they did not qualify as emergency detention? Okay, what an amazing question, right? I can only imagine if I was on scene here and you're like, man, what am I going to do here? Let me just tell you one quick piece of advice, right? If you are in the situation and you're like, man, I don't know what to do. I don't have Anthony on my shoulder over here. What am I going to do here? I think that the first thing that you should start thinking about is, keeping the scene safe, right? If this person is combative and so forth, just we want everybody to be safe, but you need to start making some phone calls, right? And, you need to start asking higher ups, like, what do you want me to do here, right? I'm not sure what to do here. We can't civilly commit this person. What do you want me to do, right? And then let the bosses. And I just think that's an important thing to say because part of their job, when you have three stripes and bars and stars, is to make decisions like this. Now, let's go through the law. I think the first thing that we can agree on is that you are going to need a law to enable you to do this, right? We are not the henchmen, the bodyguards, the muscle of EMS, right? If they have their own medical protocols and they are allowed to involuntarily transport somebody against their, in other words, they have their own rules, right? They have their own liabilities. We need to make sure that we're acting in our own, we're playing our own sandbox here. We're not EMS. We don't have their rules, right? We don't have their medical training. And quite frankly, I've taught some EMS folks some, Fourth Amendment issues and due process issues, but that's not our sandbox, right? And so what law are you enforcing? I got to tell you, look, my advice, and I'm not giving you legal advice here. I'm just giving you some legal education because I can understand that this situation can be a little tough. But my thing is like, what law are we allowed to enforce here? Now, it doesn't have to be criminal. Now, and I explain to what I mean by this. It can be civil, right? Civil commitments. If a person has a mental crisis and they are a danger to themselves or others, and they are going to get involuntarily committed to a hospital, that is obviously not a criminal issue. However, if you're in line with the law, can you still force them to go to the hospital? The answer is yes, right? So what I want to do here is I want to, look at a code here, and let me just kind of show you what I have. So, all right. So Tennessee code, this is, it's a few codes here, right? So, mainly 33-6.0-401 all the way to 427, but this is actually 401, emergency detention. And it says here, if and only if, man, Tennessee don't play when they write their codes, right? They have a way of talking. They're like, listen here, dummy, we're going to make it very plain for you. If a person has a mental illness or a serious emotional disturbance and the person poses an imminent substantial likelihood of serious harm under 501, which we would have to read that to get that, but because of the mental illness or serious emotional disturbance, then they make it very easy. This is like Boolean logic here, right? If, then, end, right? The person may be detained under -402 to obtain examination for certification of need for care and treatment. So this is basically, Tennessee's civil commitment statute. So let's look at this with the facts presented so far, right? the person has a mental illness. Well, I am not aware of any cases or interpretations that being highly intoxicated is actually a mental illness, right? It's just not, right? Yeah, being an alcoholic can be considered, a mental illness, but that's not why they're going to the hospital. You're not going to the hospital for being an alcoholic. You're not being civilly committed for being an alcoholic. You're not being civilly committed because you're a drug addict, right? You're being committed because you have some mental illness, right? So the next thing is, or a serious emotional disturbance. Okay, so I have not done research on how Tennessee defines a serious emotional disturbance, but I don't think it means being highly intoxicated. I really don't. I don't think that that's what the legislature meant. They're talking about a behavioral health emergency, right? They're talking about that like excited delirium situation, right? They're talking about people who, though may not be mentally ill, are contemplating suicide, right? They're contemplating, an active shooter event. They're thinking about killing their boss because they didn't get that raise, right? That's a serious emotional disturbance, right? Even though, in all respects, they actually may be as sane as you and me, right? But something triggered them and they're having a very, very bad day. So I do not think that this one, 401, applies to the person that's highly intoxicated and falling over the street. Now, the next thing, which I have not found yet in Tennessee, but I'm hoping it exists, right? The next one is, do you have a drunk in public statute? And I'm talking to my Tennessee folks, right? That would allow you to detain a person to dry out, right? So, for example, Nevada, which is where I'm from, right? Nevada has a revised statute that would allow police to involuntarily, essentially, right, take people off the street that are so intoxicated that they're falling over drunk and they're going to fall in the travel lane and they cannot care for themselves. It's not like they're committing suicide. In fact, maybe they're the opposite. Maybe they're a happy drunk, but they just can't control themselves. Now, Nevada allows police to assist in that transportation, right? Now, we don't bring them to jail. Now, look, many places, the jail is the where people dry out, right? But a lot of cities, big cities especially, they go to some kind of clinic or something, or they go to a kind of like a group home. We call it in Nevada, we call it West Care, right? At least in Las Vegas, they go to West Care. There's a little bed there, and they just dry out and they're monitored, and given fluids, and if they need to throw up, there's a little barf bag right there and so forth. But the point is, it's not like they don't get charged anything, and it's against their will, but it's for their safety. So I guess my point here is this, right? Um, I agree with the officer that being highly intoxicated does not qualify to be civilly committed for a mental illness, right? That's not what's going on here. However, do you have a statute in Tennessee? Or do you have a statute, an ordinance, right? That would allow the person to be detained temporarily because they're just so intoxicated, right? I think that, most states have something on the books that allow this, right? Otherwise, you have this conundrum we're talking about right now. If you know what that law is, put it in the comments, right? I would love to know. If you know what that law is, please share with me. I wasn't able to find it tonight, but I'm sure there's something out there. But that's why I got my Blue to Gold Mafia peeps, my captains out there that you're gonna have my back. But that's the answer. Be very careful. I think you should have a law. If you don't have a law that enables you to do this, I would caution you that you probably should be light hands, because at the end of the day, it's a lot more, tempting to sue a police officer than the EMS person, because you have a lot more rules to control your behavior than EMS, right? So that's my answer. I hope it helps. This is just contributing to the conversation. Thank you for what you guys do out there. What a tough job, especially for situations like this. But if you like what I'm doing here, if you like at least this conversation we started, please like, subscribe, share with your friends. And until next time, my friends, you stay safe.